The night it all started, the rain was falling hard against the windows of my brother's small apartment. I remember that sound because it covered everything. The heartbeat in my chest, the silence in the room, and the way his partner looked at me for the first time. His name was Ryan Hale, a police officer. Calm, tall, built like someone who could carry the weight of the world, and probably had. He'd stopped by to drop off some files for my brother, who had twisted his ankle during a chase the day before. I opened the door, still half asleep, wearing a loose t-shirt and joggers. Ryan froze for a second. His eyes, dark and sharp, scanned me quickly, like he was assessing a situation, then softened. "You must be Ethan," he said, his voice steady but warm. "Your brother's inside?" "Yeah," I answered, stepping aside. "He's on the couch. Sprained ankle, dramatic attitude." That made him laugh quietly as he walked past me, the smell of rain and cologne lingering in the air long after he entered. I didn't know it then, but that moment, the look he gave me when our eyes met, would start something neither of us was ready for. From that night on, Ryan kept showing up. At first just for work, then for dinner, then just to check in. My brother thought it was out of loyalty. I started to suspect it was something else. There was a night when we all watched a movie together. My brother fell asleep halfway through, snoring loudly. Ryan sat on the other side of the couch, his arm resting on the back. When I leaned forward to grab the remote, his hand brushed mine, lightly, almost hesitant. But it lingered. Long enough to make me look up. He didn't move. Neither did I. For a full second, the air between us changed. It wasn't just tension, it was recognition. But then my brother stirred in his sleep, and Ryan stood abruptly, pretending to check his phone. "I should head out," he said quickly. "I didn't sleep that night. The next morning I found a note under the coffee mug I'd left in the sink, small, folded twice. It said, 'I can't stop thinking about last night.' That's when I knew this wasn't just curiosity. It was a line neither of us was supposed to cross, but we did, and once we did, there was no going back. If you've ever found yourself caught between what's right and what feels inevitable, you'll understand this story. Because sometimes love doesn't ask for permission, it just happens. Stay until the end, because what started as a secret between a cop and his partner's brother will end in a way you'll never forget. The next time I saw Ryan, the air between us felt different. It was a Sunday afternoon, the kind of lazy day when the city outside seems to pause. My brother Mark had invited him over for a quick catch-up, saying they needed to review some reports before their next shift. I told myself I didn't care. But when I heard the knock on the door, something inside me shifted, that quiet tension that comes before a storm. When I opened the door, there he was. Ryan Hale, dressed in plain clothes this time, a dark t-shirt that hugged his chest, jeans that looked impossibly fitted, and a police badge hanging loosely from a chain around his neck. His hair was still damp, his jaw freshly shaved, and his eyes, God, those eyes, the kind that made it hard to remember why you were supposed to look away. "Hey," I said, trying to sound casual. "Come in, Mark's just getting his leg iced again." He nodded, but for a second he didn't move. His eyes swept over me again, that same careful look he'd given the first night, half professional, half something else entirely. Then he smiled softly. "You look different today," he said, his tone low, almost private. "Different good or different bad?" "Just different," he said, stepping inside. Mark's voice broke the tension. "Rye, over here, man." Ryan turned his attention toward him, walking to the couch like nothing had happened. But I knew it had. I could still feel the warmth of his gaze long after he passed by. I busied myself in the kitchen, pretending to scroll through my phone, pretending not to hear them talk about precinct politics and field reports. But every time Ryan laughed, that deep, quiet kind of laugh, it reached me like a pulse. At one point, he got up to grab a glass of water. I turned, and suddenly he was there, just a few feet away from me. "You making coffee?" he asked, thinking about it. "I'll take one if you do." His voice had changed, softer, closer. He leaned against the counter, his arm brushing mine as I reached for a mug. The silence between us was sharp, almost physical. I could feel the pull, that invisible line tightening again. I turned toward him slowly. "So about that note you left me." Ryan froze. His fingers tightened slightly on the counter. "You weren't supposed to see that." I raised an eyebrow. "You left it in my mug." He looked down, then back up at me, eyes steady now. "I didn't mean to." He stopped, exhaling. "Okay, maybe I did. But I shouldn't have. It's not right, Ethan." "Why not?" "Because he's my partner. Because this," he gestured vaguely between us, "this can't happen." But the way he said it told me it already was happening. I stepped closer. "Then why are you still here?" Ryan didn't answer. His jaw clenched, his chest rose and fell. Then he said, almost in a whisper, "You have no idea how hard it's been to act like I don't notice you." The words hit me like a shock. I didn't move, didn't breathe. And then Mark's voice echoed again from the living room. "Hey, you two done in there?" Ryan stepped back quickly, grabbing his mug like it was a lifeline. "Thanks for the coffee," he said under his breath, avoiding my eyes. He left soon after, but not before glancing at me one last time. A look that carried more weight than any touch could. That night, I sat by my window, watching the rain return, replaying everything in my head. The way he looked at me, the way his voice softened when he said my name. It wasn't just attraction. It was something heavier, something dangerous. The next few days were quiet. Too quiet. Mark went back to work, limping but stubborn as ever, while I tried to bury myself in work and routine. But one night, just as I was getting ready for bed, there was a knock at the door. It was past midnight. I opened it to find Ryan standing there, still in his uniform, soaked from the rain. His eyes were darker than I'd ever seen them. "Ethan," he said, his voice low and rough, "I shouldn't be here." "Then why are you?" I asked. He stepped inside without answering. The rain pattered softly against the window as he stood there, dripping onto the floor, his badge glinting faintly under the light. "I tried to stay away," he said finally. "But every time I close my eyes, I see your face." I didn't know what to say. My heart was pounding so hard it hurt. He took a step closer, then another, until he was right in front of me. His hand lifted, hesitating, then brushed against my cheek just enough to make me tremble. "I shouldn't want this," he said, his voice barely audible now. "But I do." And then he leaned in, close enough that I could feel his breath against my skin, close enough that everything else disappeared. For a moment, it felt like time stopped. Then just as our lips were about to touch, a sound broke through the silence. Mark's voice, coming from the hallway. "Ryan, what the hell are you doing here?" Ryan froze. I turned toward the door, my stomach twisting as Mark appeared, eyes wide, confusion turning into something darker. The moment shattered, and just like that, the line we'd been dancing around was gone, but not the feeling. That was only getting started. Mark's voice hit like a gunshot. It froze the air, slicing straight through the room. Ryan turned, his face pale under the dim hallway light. I could almost hear his pulse racing, or maybe it was mine. My brother's eyes darted between us, suspicion written all over his face. "What are you here, Ryan?" Mark asked again, slower this time. His tone carried that edge only a cop could perfect, calm, but laced with danger. Ryan straightened, his expression snapping back into that professional mask. "You weren't answering your phone." "I came by to check if you were okay." "At midnight." Mark shot back, limping closer. "Since when do partners make surprise visits in the middle of the night?" Ryan's jaw tensed. He didn't look at me. Didn't move. I swallowed hard, forcing my voice to stay steady. He was just passing by, I think. The rain, Mark's gaze snapped to me. "Stay out of this, Ethan." The authority in his tone made me take a step back. Ryan rubbed the back of his neck, his wet uniform still clinging to his body, water pooling on the floor. He looked exhausted, torn. "You're right," he said finally. "It was a mistake to come. I just needed to clear my head." Mark studied him for a long, silent moment. "Then clear it somewhere else." Ryan nodded once and left without another word. The door closed behind him with a soft thud that sounded louder than it should have. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. Then Mark turned to me, eyes narrowing. "What was that?" "What was what?" Don't play dumb with me, he said, his voice sharp. He's my partner. And you're flirting with him now? I felt the heat rush to my face. It's not like that. Then what is it? I hesitated. Because I didn't have an answer. Not one that would make sense to him. Not one that would sound innocent. He exhaled heavily, pinching the bridge of his nose. Jesus, Ethan, he's married to the badge. He doesn't need you complicating things, I wanted to argue. I wanted to tell him that it wasn't my fault, that I hadn't planned any of this. But instead I just nodded. Yeah, I said quietly. You're right. Mark sighed and limped back to his room, muttering something about how cops never get to have normal lives. The door clicked shut, leaving me alone with the sound of the rain. But that night I couldn't stop thinking about Ryan, about the way he'd said my name, the look in his eyes before Mark appeared. That wasn't duty. That wasn't friendship. It was something deeper, and it terrified me how much I wanted it. Days passed. Ryan didn't come around anymore. No texts, no calls. My brother acted like nothing had happened, but I could feel the tension lingering every time the precinct called. Then, one evening, I saw Ryan again. By accident. I was leaving the coffee shop downtown, and he was across the street, leaning against his patrol car. The sunset hit his uniform, the badge catching light like a star. He saw me, and for a second he froze. Then he crossed the street, Ethan. His voice was soft, low, the kind of tone meant for secrets. Hey, I said, my heart pounding. Long time no. He didn't let me finish. I shouldn't even be talking to you, he said, glancing around. But I can't stop thinking about that night, I swallowed. Neither can I. He looked down, his hand brushing the back of his neck, that same nervous gesture he always did when he was holding something in. Your brother's been asking questions at the precinct. He knows something's off. I told him nothing's going on, but he stopped himself, meeting my eyes. There is something, isn't there? I didn't answer. I didn't have to. The silence between us was enough. The sound of cars, the chatter of strangers, it all blurred into background noise. For a moment the world felt smaller, quieter, like it was holding its breath. Ryan took a step closer. This is crazy, he said. You're his brother. I'm his partner. This could ruin everything. Then why are you here? I asked. He hesitated, then said, because walking away felt worse. The confession hit me like lightning. He looked around once more, then motioned toward the side alley behind the coffee shop. Come with me, he said. We walked there, the narrow brick walls damp from the rain, the air cool and heavy. He stopped, facing me now, his uniform still crisp, his expression unreadable. I need you to understand something, he said quietly. I've spent my whole life following the rules, keeping my head down, doing what's expected. But when I'm around you, he shook his head, his voice cracking slightly. I don't even recognize myself. My throat tightened. Maybe that's not a bad thing. He stared at me for a long moment, like he was memorizing my face. Then he stepped closer, close enough for me to feel his breath again, the warmth of it mixing with the cold air. His hand lifted slowly, hesitating before brushing against my jaw. This shouldn't be happening, he whispered. But it is. He exhaled. And then his lips were on mine, firm, desperate, full of every moment we'd both tried to bury. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't careful. It was a confession in itself. Everything we'd been holding back, breaking through all at once. When we finally pulled apart, his forehead rested against mine, his breath ragged. I can't promise you anything, he said. Not while I'm still his partner. I'm not asking for promises, I whispered. Just honesty. He nodded slowly, then backed away, straightening his uniform like he was putting the mask back on. I'll call you, he said, and then he was gone, swallowed by the city lights and sirens. I stood there for a long time, my lips still burning, my heart torn between guilt and something dangerously close to love. Because no matter how wrong it was, I already knew I'd wait for that call. For 3 days, Ryan didn't call. 3 long, unbearable days. Every sound outside made my chest tighten, every car door, every siren in the distance. I knew it was ridiculous, waiting for someone whose entire life revolved around rules, hierarchy, and silence. But I couldn't stop. When his name finally appeared on my phone, I froze. Ryan. Can we talk? Not at your place. Too risky. I didn't even think. I just wrote back. Where? Ryan. The old training lot behind the precinct. Midnight. By the time I got there, the city was asleep. The lot was dark and half-flooded from a recent rainstorm, the cracked asphalt shining under the flickering streetlights. The smell of wet concrete and gasoline lingered in the air, sharp, familiar, almost cinematic. He was already there, leaning against his car. The blue lights from a nearby lamppost framed his face, cutting sharp lines across his jaw. His uniform jacket was unzipped, showing a grey undershirt clinging to his chest. He looked tired. He looked human. "Ethan," he said quietly, like he was afraid the night might hear him. "You said you wanted to talk." "I did," he said, rubbing the back of his neck, "but seeing you again makes that harder." I stepped closer. "You kissed me, Ryan. You don't get to pretend nothing happened." His eyes softened, then hardened again. "I'm not pretending. I'm trying to protect you, protect us." "From who?" "From your brother, from the department, from myself, maybe." He looked away, staring at the reflection of the streetlight on the puddle at his feet. "If this gets out, Ethan, it doesn't just end my career. It ruins your brother's reputation, too. You know how they are at the precinct. They'd tear us apart before we even had a chance to explain." I didn't answer. The silence stretched between us like a wound. Then I said quietly, "You're still thinking about us." He met my eyes. "Yeah," he admitted, "and that's the problem." For a moment neither of us spoke. The only sound was the soft hum of the city in the distance, the world moving on while we stood still. Finally, I took another step forward, closing the gap between us. "What if it doesn't have to be a problem?" he exhaled, shaking his head. "You don't get it. You're 24, Ethan. You can start over, disappear from this. I can't. My life's already built around walls and secrets." I felt my throat tighten. "So what was the kiss, then? A mistake?" His voice was raw. "No, it was the only honest thing I've done in years." That hit me harder than I expected. He took another step toward me, his boots splashing in the puddle. "You make me feel like I'm not wearing the badge for once. Like I can just breathe." I swallowed hard. "Then breathe with me." He stared at me for a long time, his chest rising and falling, and then he reached out. His fingers brushed my neck, trembling just enough to make my skin burn. "You're dangerous, you know that? Why? Because you want me? Because I can't stop." And then he kissed me again, slower this time, deliberate, like he was memorizing the taste of something he'd been forbidden to have. His hand slid behind my neck, pulling me closer, the world narrowing to that single, impossible moment. When we finally broke apart, the sound of sirens echoed faintly in the distance, a cruel reminder of who he was, of what we were risking. He took a shaky breath. "We can't keep doing this." "You keep saying that," I said, "but you keep showing up." He let out a humorless laugh. "You think I don't hate myself for that?" I wanted to tell him I didn't care, that I'd take every risk if it meant having one more moment with him. But before I could, his radio crackled on his shoulder, a sharp voice breaking through the night. "Unit 42, respond. Possible break-in on 5th and Pine." Ryan's whole body tensed, duty flooding back into him like armor. He grabbed his radio. "This is Hale. Copy that. En route." He turned to me, voice softer now. "I have to go." "Of course you do." He hesitated, looking at me like he wanted to say more. "Don't wait up," he said finally. And then he was gone. Lights flashing, engine roaring into the distance. I stood there until the sound disappeared completely. When I got home, the apartment was dark. Mark was sitting at the kitchen table, his face half lit by the glow of his phone. "Where were you?" he asked, not looking up. "Out." "Out where?" I didn't answer. He finally looked up, his eyes sharp and tired. "Ethan, I talked to Ryan today." My heart stopped. "You what?" He's been acting weird lately, distant, snapping at everyone. I asked if it had anything to do with you, and he just froze. Wouldn't even look me in the eye. I forced a small laugh. Maybe he's just stressed. Mark studied me. Yeah, he said slowly. Maybe. He didn't believe it. I could see it in his face. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Ryan's face, torn between duty and desire, between the man he was and the man he could be. And I hated how much I understood that. The next day, the news broke. A local officer injured in a shootout on 5th and Pine. My stomach dropped. I didn't need to hear the name. I knew. I was out the door before I even grabbed my jacket. When I reached the hospital, the waiting room was chaos. Uniforms everywhere, whispers, phones ringing. I pushed through the crowd until I saw him, lying on a gurney, blood on his shirt, his hand clutching the edge of the blanket like he was still trying to fight. Mark was there too, standing beside him, pale as paper. He turned when he saw me, eyes wet. "He's lucky," he said, his voice trembling. "The bullet missed his heart by an inch." Ryan's eyes opened weakly, finding mine in the crowd. And even there, in pain, surrounded by his world of rules and uniforms, he smiled. Just barely. It was the kind of smile that said everything we could never say out loud. But I didn't know then that the worst was yet to come. Because the next day, Ryan Hale would be forced to choose, not between his badge and his heart, but between living a lie and losing everything. The hospital smelled like antiseptic and sorrow. The white walls seemed to swallow every sound, except for the steady beep of Ryan's heart monitor, each tone reminding me he was still alive, still breathing, still mine in some small, forbidden way. I had been sitting there for hours, my leg bouncing restlessly, eyes fixed on the door every time a nurse passed. Ryan was still unconscious when I arrived, pale and silent under the thin hospital sheets. The blood that once stained his shirt had been washed away, but the memory of it still clung to my chest like smoke. Mark was standing by the window, arms crossed, staring out at the rain. He hadn't said much since the paramedics brought Ryan in. He didn't need to. The silence between us said everything. "He's stable," he said finally, his voice low. "But they're keeping him for observation." I nodded, not trusting my voice. Mark turned to face me, his jaw tight. "You came here fast," he said. I looked up at him. "I heard it on the news." He studied me for a moment, his eyes narrowing slightly, not in anger, but in confusion, maybe even suspicion. "Funny," he said. "You showed up before some of the other officers." I looked away. "I just wanted to make sure he was okay." Mark walked closer, his boots heavy against the tile floor. "You've barely met him, Ethan. Why do you care so much?" The question landed like a punch. I could feel my pulse in my throat. Before I could answer, a soft voice broke through the tension. "Because he's not like everyone else." Ryan. His voice was faint but clear enough to stop both of us. I turned to see his eyes half open, a weak smile tugging at the corner of his lips. Mark rushed to his side. "Jesus, Rye, you scared the hell out of us." Ryan blinked slowly. "Sorry about that." He turned his head toward me for just a second, a fleeting, private glance that said more than any word could. "Didn't mean to cause trouble." Mark let out a shaky laugh. "You? Trouble?" "Never." The moment passed quickly. A nurse came in, adjusting Ryan's IV, checking his vitals. I stepped back, trying to compose myself, but Ryan's eyes found mine again as she worked. For a second, it felt like the rest of the room didn't exist. When the nurse left, Mark looked at Ryan. "You need anything? Water? Food?" Ryan shook his head. "Just rest." Mark hesitated, then nodded. "I'll grab some coffee. Be back in 5. He gave me one last look before leaving the room. The door clicked shut behind him. Silence filled the space again, heavy but alive. Ryan turned his head toward me. "You shouldn't be here." "Then why do I feel like I had to be?" He smiled weakly. "Because you're stubborn." I stepped closer, sitting on the edge of his bed. His hand was resting near the blanket, pale and bruised from the IV line. I reached out, brushing my fingers against his. He didn't pull away. "I thought I was going to lose you." I whispered. You almost did, he said quietly. The kid they shot at was running toward the street. I pushed him out of the way and, well, here we are. I swallowed hard. You saved him, he smiled faintly. Yeah, guess I finally did something right. You've done more than that, I said, my voice breaking a little. You saved me too. He looked at me, his eyes dark and unreadable. Don't say that, Ethan. It's true, I said. You make me feel like I can be myself. Like I don't have to keep pretending. He closed his eyes for a moment, exhaling slowly. And what happens when your brother finds out? When the department finds out? You think they'll let this slide? I don't care about them. He opened his eyes again, sharper now. You should, because I do. I can't let you become collateral damage in my mess. Ryan, he squeezed my hand suddenly, his grip surprisingly strong for someone who had been shot. Listen to me. If anyone asks, you didn't come here. You didn't see me. I stared at him, my chest tightening. You're really going to pretend we're nothing? He didn't answer right away. Then he said softly, if it keeps you safe. Yes. The door opened again before I could respond. Mark was back holding 2 coffees. He froze when he saw us, our hands still too close, the silence between us too heavy. He set the cups down slowly. Am I interrupting something? Ryan quickly released my hand. Just thanking your brother for the visit. Mark looked between us, suspicion hardening into something colder. Right, he said flatly. Well, you need rest, Hale. I'll handle things at the station. Ryan nodded. Thanks, partner. Mark turned to me. Ethan, let's go. I'll stay a bit longer. Now, Mark said, sharper this time. I followed him out into the hallway. The door shut behind us, and he stopped, turning to face me. What's going on between you two? Nothing, I said too fast. He leaned in closer. Don't lie to me. I saw the way you looked at him. I know that look. Mark, Jesus Christ, Ethan, he said, his voice cracking with frustration. He's my partner. Do you have any idea what you're doing? I bit the inside of my cheek, trying to keep my voice steady. I didn't plan this. He ran a hand through his hair. You never plan anything. You just feel, and then everyone around you has to deal with the fallout. That hurt more than I wanted to admit. He sighed, calmer now. Look, I'm not your enemy. But this, whatever it is, it's going to blow up. And when it does, none of us walk away clean. He walked down the hallway, leaving me there, with his words echoing in my head. When I looked back through the small hospital window, Ryan was watching me. He lifted his hand slowly, just a small wave, barely there, before closing his eyes again. That night, as I walked home under the city lights, I realized something terrible. Mark was right. This wasn't just attraction anymore, it was love. Dangerous, impossible love, and deep down, I knew something was coming. Something that would break all 3 of us. The storm that night felt different. The kind that carried tension in the air, sharp, heavy, impossible to ignore. I hadn't seen Ryan in days, not since the hospital. My brother hadn't said much either, but the silence between us had changed. It wasn't ordinary anymore. It was watchful, suspicious. Then just past midnight, my phone buzzed. Ryan, I need to see you. Now my heart jumped. Where? Ryan, the old Riverside warehouse. No one goes there anymore. I grabbed my jacket and left without thinking. The streets were slick with rain, the city glowing orange under the storm clouds. My mind raced the whole drive there. What if he was in trouble again? What if this was the last time I'd see him? When I arrived, the warehouse loomed over the river like a ghost. Broken windows, rusted doors, the sound of thunder rolling through the empty halls. I stepped inside and saw him standing near the window, his police jacket hanging open, rain dripping from his hair. Ryan, I called softly. He turned, and for a moment, relief flashed across his face. Then it was gone, replaced by something darker. You shouldn't have come, he said. Then why did you call me? Because, he said, his voice breaking slightly, I didn't know what else to do. I walked closer. Tell me what happened. He looked away, jaw clenched. Mark knows, I froze. What? He confronted me after shift. Said he saw how I looked at you in the hospital. Said I betrayed him. I swallowed hard. What did you say? That he was wrong. He laughed bitterly. But he's not stupid. He knows I'm lying. My chest tightened. Ryan! He turned to me again, eyes glinting under the lightning flashing through the window. He's going to report me, Ethan. He said he has to. Said I'm unfit for service. The words hit like bullets. He wouldn't do that. He's your partner. Ryan stepped closer, his voice trembling. He's your brother. And that makes it worse. To him, I'm not just breaking the rules. I'm crossing blood. I didn't know what to say. The sound of the rain filled the silence between us. Then Ryan reached out suddenly, his hand gripping mine. We could leave, he said. Just disappear, tonight. I stared at him, speechless. You'd really do that? I'd rather lose the badge than lose you. My heart was pounding so hard it hurt. For a moment, the world shrank, just him, the rain, and the impossible weight of what he was saying. Before I could answer, a loud voice cut through the storm behind us. Don't you dare. I spun around. Mark stood in the doorway, rain pouring off his jacket, gun holstered at his side, but his hands trembling. Ryan stepped back. Mark, don't. His voice cracked like thunder. I trusted you, Hale. You were my partner, my friend. And you come into my home, into my family. It's not like that, Ryan said quickly. You don't understand. I understand perfectly, Mark snapped. You used him. I didn't. Ryan's voice rose raw and desperate. I love him. The room went dead quiet. Mark's face drained of color. Say that again. I love him, Ryan said, steady now, eyes fixed on him. And I'm not ashamed of it. For a second I thought my brother might hit him. His fists clenched, his jaw locked. But then his eyes met mine, and something inside him broke. Ethan, he said quietly. Do you love him too? I hesitated, tears stinging my eyes. Yes. That one word shattered everything. Mark stumbled back like I'd punched him. You're my little brother, he said, almost to himself. I raised you after Dad died. I taught you right from wrong. And now? He looked between us, eyes red. You're choosing him over your own family? I took a step forward. I'm not choosing sides, Mark. I'm choosing truth. Mark's voice cracked. Then you've already chosen. He turned toward the door. Ryan moved slightly, maybe to stop him, maybe just to speak. But the sound of police sirens echoed outside. Before either of us could move, Ryan froze. Oh, you called them. Mark didn't answer. Ryan's hand went to his badge, then dropped. You reported me. Mark's eyes were wet now, full of guilt and fury all at once. You left me no choice. Mark, please, I begged. He didn't do anything wrong. He broke every rule we swore to follow, Mark said. And I broke one too, by not stopping it sooner. The sirens grew louder, flashing red and blue through the shattered windows. Ryan looked at me one last time. Go, he whispered, before they see you. I'm not leaving you. He gave me a sad smile. You already saved me, Ethan. You just don't know it yet. The doors burst open. Officers flooded the warehouse, shouting commands. Ryan raised his hands, calm, resigned. The look he gave me before they took him away will haunt me forever. Not fear, not anger, but peace. Mark stayed behind. He couldn't look at me. When it was over, I walked out into the rain. My clothes were soaked, my heart broken beyond repair. Ryan's car was still parked by the river, the lights flickering faintly through the downpour. I touched the badge he'd dropped before they cuffed him, cold, heavy, shining in the stormlight. He'd said once that the badge defined him, but standing there alone, I realized that maybe love had too, and in the end, both had destroyed him.
A week after they took Ryan away, the world felt wrong. Quiet in all the wrong places, loud in all the others. The precinct was silent whenever my brother came home. He stopped wearing his badge around the apartment, stopped talking about work altogether. Every time I tried to ask about Ryan, he changed the subject, or worse, just left the room. I visited the station once. They wouldn't let me see him. Internal investigation, they said. Officer Hale violated code of conduct. The way they said it, like he was dirt, like he'd committed a crime worse than the ones he'd spent his life fighting, made my stomach twist. Mark told me to stay away. The more you show up, the worse it'll get for him, he said. For both of you. But I couldn't. I didn't care about rules or whispers. I just wanted to see him one more time. On a cold Thursday morning, I found out where they were keeping him. Temporary holding. I waited outside until a guard with tired eyes finally relented. 10 minutes, he said. When I stepped inside, Ryan was sitting at a metal table, his wrists cuffed loosely, his face bruised and tired but still, somehow, calm. He looked up, and for a second, the hardness fell away. My throat closed up. "Hey!" He smiled faintly. "You shouldn't be here." I sat down across from him, ignoring the guard in the corner. "You said that before. Look where we are." He chuckled softly. "Guess you never listened well." I leaned forward. "What's going to happen?" He sighed. "They're pushing for dismissal. Maybe charges. Fraternization, conduct unbecoming, they'll find whatever sticks." Mark tried to help, but it's out of his hands now. My heart sank. "He tried." Ryan nodded. "He told them it wasn't your fault. That I crossed the line." I clenched my fists. "He's protecting me by destroying you." "He's protecting his family," Ryan said quietly. "That's who he is. Your family too." He looked down, a small, sad smile touching his lips. "Not in their eyes." Silence settled between us, heavy, cruel. I wanted to reach out, but the handcuffs glinted between us like a warning. After a while, Ryan said softly, "Do you regret it?" "Regret what?" "What we did. What we almost had." I shook my head, tears already burning behind my eyes. "Never." He exhaled slowly, relief and heartbreak mingling in that single sound. "Good." Because for the first time in years, I didn't feel like a cop. I felt human. The guard shifted by the door, checking his watch. Time was running out. Ryan straightened slightly. "Listen to me. When I get out of here, I'm leaving the city. Maybe somewhere quiet. Maybe. No badges, no uniforms. Just peace." I swallowed hard. "And you want me to just forget you?" He smiled faintly. "No. I want you to remember me right. Not like this." I reached across the table. The guard didn't move. Ryan's fingers brushed mine, just barely. "You changed me," I said. "You made me see something I didn't know I was missing." He looked up at me, eyes soft but steady. Then my life wasn't wasted. The door opened behind me. "Time's up." Ryan didn't look away. "Go, Ethan." I stood slowly. "You said you'd find peace," I whispered. "Promise me." "I promise," he said, smiling. "But only if you do too." That was the last time I saw him alive. 2 days later, they said he was being transferred to another facility, then the news broke. A single paragraph buried in the local paper. "Disgraced officer found dead in holding cell." Suspected suicide. The words didn't make sense at first. They looked like they belonged to someone else's life. Someone else's story. I went to the station. Mark was there, sitting in his office, the blinds closed. He didn't look up when I entered. "Tell me it's not true," I said. He didn't answer. "Mark," I said again, louder. He looked up then, eyes hollow. "He's gone." I felt my knees give out. The room blurred. I heard him say something else. "I'm sorry, maybe," but it didn't matter. The world had gone silent. Later, when I was alone, I drove to the river. The same one near the warehouse. The rain was falling again, soft and steady, just like that night. I parked by the edge and sat there, staring at the water. In my pocket, I still had his badge. The one he'd dropped that night. I ran my thumb over it, feeling the worn metal, the faint scratches from years of duty. "You promised," I whispered. "You promised peace." The rain fell harder, blurring everything. The water, the city lights, my tears. I don't know how long I sat there, but at some point I felt something like warmth, not from the air, but from memory. His laugh. His voice. The way he said my name like it meant something. Maybe peace wasn't something he found in life. Maybe it was something he left behind in me. The next morning, I visited his grave. No ceremony, no flags, no uniformed men saluting. Just a name on a simple stone, Ryan Hale. I left his badge there. The symbol of everything that had broken him, and everything that had made him brave. When I stood up, I whispered, "I'll keep your promise for both of us." The wind moved through the trees, soft and slow, like a breath, and for the first time since he'd gone, I let myself believe he heard me. Sometimes love isn't about happy endings. It's about the courage to feel something real even when the world says you shouldn't. What would you risk for the truth? If this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. Because somewhere, someone still believes love is worth fighting for.